I'd never heard of Elizabeth Chomko before, but this is apparently her first movie. And the movie itself looked sorta okay, but the cast looked pretty good. We got Hilary Swank, Shannon, Robert Forster, and Blythe Danner. They play the grown-up kids and the elderly parents, fine casting. And the movie starts off with this great little intro sequence about this old woman who gets dressed in the middle of the night and walks out into the snow. Turns out she's got dementia, and that's what the movie is about. The family dealing with her and the husband that doesn't want to accept it. But that first sequence looks great. There's this really good score and I just loved it. So off to a good start. I was actually pleasantly surprised. But then the movie starts properly and it immediately feels clunky. And yeah, it's pretty much downhill from there. Things don't get better until the very end. But it took me maybe 15-20 minutes to figure out what the issue was. I mean, I knew it was the dialogue and the writing, but I couldn't put my finger on the exact problem. And then it clicked. It's exposition. Every line of dialogue is expositional. They explain everything and just state everything outright. All the time. I'm not even kidding. It's virtually every line of dialogue in the entire movie. Which means there's no subtlety, no ambiguity, no nothing. There's no room for interpretation or for you to figure out what's going on your own. They just tell you every time, which makes for some really unnatural dialogue. And it also leaves you with nothing to do. You can't speculate or think about what might be going on, beneath the surface, because they just put it all out there. And once I figured out what the problem was, it kinda drove me nuts. I mean, from the standpoint of dialogue, this is easily one of the worst written movies I've ever seen. And I've seen terrible movies with terrible lines and really awkward dialogue. But not like this, not in this way. This thing is so consistently awful, I just couldn't get past it. It just overshadows everything else, because every exchange between two characters is expositional. Every one of them. Even the small side characters that pop up. Like there's an old lady who shows up a couple of times, and one of her lines is, I was widowed 17 years ago and never remarried. Just randomly at the dinner table. Like we desperately needed that information about the neighbor. None of it makes any sense, and that's just a tiny little example. It's just baffling. I've never seen anything like this, to be honest. And as I said, I've seen plenty of poorly written dialogue before. But not written in this way, where every single thing is just explicitly stated. It's really bizarre, to be honest, and it just completely distracted me from the rest of the movie. I mean, I've seen all of these actors give great performances before. But in this, they're not that great, because they're not given much to work with. Even Shannon couldn't really save this thing. It's just so clunky. And as I mentioned, it's a pretty good looking movie too, and the direction is perfectly fine. Even the story works, nothing wrong with it, but it just needs better writing. Now that's not to say it's all around a terrible movie, it's not. But all the good stuff is basically overshadowed by the terrible dialogue. That being said, there are actually a few scenes near the end that I liked a lot too. Scenes that don't over-explain everything and don't tell you explicitly what's going on. For once the movie lets you figure it out, and it's kinda refreshing. But then I realized those scenes all have one thing in common. Zero dialogue. And remember that intro sequence I mentioned I liked? Yeah, also zero dialogue. Coincidence? I think not. Every scene that doesn't rely on dialogue actually works. So yeah, I think for the next one Elizabeth Chomko should maybe stick to directing. Let someone else handle the script, because she's actually a really good director. But would I recommend this thing? No, not really. It's just way too clunky to be enjoyable. At least for me it was. So probably skip this one. Or don't. I'm not your dad.